I'd like to take you on a journey into the secret world of boot camp, to the place where we make United States Marines. It's a journey filled with mud and sweat and set in the swamps of Parris Island, South Carolina, a place infested with sand fleas, snakes, and alligators. But don't worry, I promise that when we're through, you will not smell like a recruit. So imagine you've just completed 11 weeks of what your recruiter promised is the toughest boot camp in the world. During your training, you've done it all. You've learned martial arts and water survival skills, rappelled off of high towers, and survived the gas chamber. You've run and marched, and you've learned to shoot a rifle. And you've just completed the grueling 72-hour endurance challenge known as the Crucible, the final test in your journey to become a United States Marine. After marching 9 painful and blister-filled miles to the finish line, you now stand in a formation surrounded by your peers. And during the ceremony, as tears stream down your face, one of your drill instructors presents you with your very own Eagle Globe and Anchor device, and for the first time calls you Marine. And you feel awesome. You've done it. You now join the less than 2% of Americans who can say they've earned the title United States Marine. But what if I told you that when you got to that parade deck, there was a row of chairs conspicuously placed behind the female formation, and that a few of the women from your platoon were sitting down because they were too tired and sore to stand? You'd think to yourself, aren't we all tired and sore? And then you notice there are no chairs behind the male formation. And you see a few of those new male Marines looking at you and looking at those women sitting down. And suddenly you don't feel as proud as you did a moment ago. You see, I told you Parris Island is the place where we make Marines. But what I didn't tell you is that it's also the place where we create gender stereotypes and lay the foundation for sexism in our Corps. And it sells women and our national defense short. But it's exactly what I found when I took command of the 4th Battalion, the only all-female unit in the entire Department of Defense. You see, the Marine Corps is the only service to maintain segregated boot camp for men and women. And when I asked the leadership why, I was told that it was the only way to create confidence in female recruits. But here's the thing. The evidence I found conflicted directly with this theory. 2 tours on recruiting duty had taught me the Marine Corps had long recruited women to lower standards. And I learned quickly that at Parris Island, they also trained them to lower expectations. Now, like any battalion commander, my focus when I arrived at Parris Island was on improving the performance of my people. I wanted to make my recruits tougher, faster, and stronger because I knew the better equipped they were, the more competitive they were, the better equipped the Marine Corps would be to answer our nation's call when she needed us most. So to get a performance baseline, I compared decades of graduation scores between men and women. And what I found was shocking. For 30 years, the female recruits had lagged behind their male counterparts in every graduation category, from academics to physical fitness. And the worst part was that no one had ever cared to ask the world's most dangerous question: why? So much to the chagrin of my leadership and my Marines, I started asking why a lot. And I started with the rifle range. Because in the Marine Corps, we have a slogan: every Marine a rifleman. But for the women at Parris Island, this just didn't seem to be true. For 30 years, the female recruits had only been able to achieve a rifle range qualification rate of between 67 and 72%. By comparison, the male standard was between 88 and 92%. So essentially, a third of each female class was unable to qualify with their rifles, and they were way less accurate. Do you think these women felt very confident? So I set out to challenge the myth that women couldn't shoot. And what I found along the way is that this belief was based on a lot of assumptions, but very few facts. It turned out that because women had performed so poorly for so long, the male leadership simply assumed it was due to some physiological or psychological reason related to gender. Even the female drill instructors began to believe it. And when this happened, they spent less time and effort focused on training the women to achieve more. It simply became normal to expect the women to do less. And it resulted in a climate where being called a woman was the worst insult that any male recruit or Marine could face. But when we stopped relying on assumptions and we focused instead on shooting fundamentals, we saw immediate results. And in less than 9 months, the women were maintaining a rifle range qualification rate of just under 92% for the first time ever. Thank you. You talk about confidence. I can tell you the male recruits were shaking in their boots because there isn't an 18-year-old boy on the planet who wants to be beaten by a woman, especially one with a gun. And once my drill instructors saw what they could accomplish on the rifle range, they wanted to achieve the same success in every graduation category. By simply having higher expectations, we were destroying the myth that women couldn't compete. Needless to say, I removed the chairs behind my female formation. And lo and behold, none of my new female Marines fell out. And in fact, they stood taller. These women were eager to show their male counterparts that they were equals. And I was incredibly proud of them. But I told you that why is the most dangerous question in the world. And despite our results, or perhaps in spite of them, in June of 2015, I was relieved of command because the male leadership said I'd been too hard on my female recruits and Marines. In their view, I'd been too outspoken, too direct, and too demanding. I wonder if any other women out there have heard those same things. And directly after I was fired, immediately after I was fired, the Marine Corps returned to the status quo for how it trained women. And I was devastated. But I fought back. To me, it was a matter of principle. For decades, Parris Island had churned out female Marines who were infinitely less qualified than their male counterparts, putting them and their units at risk. America learned long ago, separate isn't equal. But the Marine Corps refuses to see the obvious. Segregated boot camp is not an effective way to train. And imagine the impact on our national defense if we maintain the status quo. Anyone who's been watching the news knows that the Marine Corps is struggling with diversity and inclusion. Just think about the recent Marines United photo sharing scandal and the reactions of many male Marines. Their comments indicate a lack of respect for their female counterparts. Where did they learn that behavior? They learned that behavior at boot camp. It's time to change the culture of the Marine Corps, starting with where we indoctrinate men and women into our value system, boot camp. Here's the thing. To do that, we know the Marine Corps won't make it happen on their own, and that's why you're here. Each of you can make an impact, and all of us should be willing to ask the world's most dangerous questions. Why? Why is the Marine Corps the only service to maintain segregated boot camp when it's been proven to be an ineffective practice? In the year that I was at Parris Island, we proved that segregated boot camp perpetuates negative stereotypes against women. But we also proved that women are much stronger than they're given credit for. There's a theory that peace comes from deterrence. And in many ways, peace is the byproduct of a strong military. But we can only have a strong military if we tap into the full potential of America's 51%. Women. And this is something the Marine Corps will only do if they're forced to change with your help. I know that, like me, you believe that our national security is important. And I know that, like me, you understand that making all Marines tougher, faster, and stronger, regardless of gender, will make the Marine Corps a better fighting force. So I'm asking for you to join me in the fight. I'm asking for you to take 5 minutes to contact your representatives in Congress to demand that the Marine Corps integrate recruit training. It's time to end segregation in America once and for all. If you want peace, our national security depends on it. Thank you.